Okay, so just to start off, I'm just going to give you a little bit of a history about this organization. So the 8th of March is International Women's Day, or IWD. The day began as an International Working Women's Day. It now extends to all women because all women work and all women belong in the women's sex class. We've been marking IWD for well over 100 years. While governments and corporates in the UN mark the day with expensive breakfasts and lunches, and more recently, the inclusion of men, feminists do not. For feminists, we celebrate our gains as women and we recommit to unfurnished struggles and to challenging our setbacks. The state, the corporates, the UN are fast erasing women's rights, but grassroots women are just getting started in their defense. Yes. In 1909, the Socialist Party of America organized a National Women's Day in New York City. Female garment workers went on strike around pay conditions and hours. The next year, in 1910, the International Socialist Women's Conference agreed to a proposal by German socialist Clara Zetkin to dedicate a day every year to campaigning for women's suffrage. In 1928 saw the first International Women's Day in Australia, organised by the Communist Party and held in Sydney. The activists were campaigning for equal pay. Momentum built, and the next year the first Women's Day was held in Brisbane. Under the leadership of communist Eva Bacon, after whom one of our 2 annual awards is named, the Brisbane IWD Committee expanded their activities from the 1950s. Over the next decades, the Brisbane IWD Committee campaigned for peace, nuclear disarmament, and for the rights of Aboriginal women and girls. It often featured impressive guest presenters like, probably horrible with this name, Udaguru Nonukau, and hosted international delegations. In Brisbane in 1978, activists from the Women's Liberation Movement defied bans by the Bjelke-Petersen government to march. This was an action about our very right to organise and protest as women. Many arrests were made that day. Today, we experience similar attacks against our right to organise, to meet, speak and protest. Not from Bjelke-Petersen type people this time, but from those who see themselves as somehow different from that particular dictator. The United Nations didn't start acknowledging International Women's Day until 1975, and today parts of the UN don't even know what a woman is. Today, we meet at the Emma Miller statue, and that's appropriate because IWD has its origins in the organised working class, although the organised working class does not always support women's rights. Today, for example, the union leaderships, though not rank and file members, are opposed to women's sex-based rights. Back in 1890, Emma Miller helped to form women's unions of tailoresses, and she championed equal pay and the principle of one vote, one value at a time when women were denied the right to vote. Emma is buried in Toowong Cemetery. For feminists, IWD will always be a day where we honour the women who committed their lives to the women's resistance and have passed on, where we acknowledge the successful campaigns that have been won, and where we recommit to women's movement goals. Okay, I'm just going to script his name again, I'm so bad. In the words of Udaguru Nonukal, let no one say the past is dead, the past is all about us and within.
Can you hear me? Oh, cool. Okay. So the title I gave Anna for my speech is just Men Aren't Women. And I'm just going to say that over the last few years since hearing about this issue and then kind of becoming known for it, I say to like people in my life all the time, like, I'm saying the stupidest things I've ever said in my life. Like, it's like to be, like, have been, like, given any sort of credit for them is ridiculous. I mean, women don't have a penis. It's just so incredibly stupid. But when, I didn't know about this issue until the 7th of February 2020. And I remember it because I woke up to being called a TERF and just thousands upon thousands of trolls and media going after me. And I sort of went online immediately to sort of try and work out what was happening. And I found the gender critical subreddit. And I sort of looked at what all the women there were saying and just started Googling different things. And honestly, it took minutes to see that, like, not a word of a lie. They were 100% right about everything. And so, but because I sort of, even though I sort of peaked in beginning of 2020, I try and have like empathy for people who don't know yet what is happening, because people lead busy lives. Everyone has different issues that are sort of their one issue campaign, or like campaigners, or whatever their passion is. And that if you live in a bubble where you read sort of one type of media or maybe none or whatever, I mean, you can quite easily not know that this is going on. I mean, I was on Twitter for years. I just never tweeted, but I was in this like Trump-hating bubble where this was never mentioned because that's all they were talking about. So I think it's just really important to remember that and have like some empathy and patience with people's journey of realizing what is going on, and not everybody discovers everything at the exact same time. Everyone's going to come at it with different angles, different baggage, whether it's they discover that it's in their family or that they're fearful of losing their jobs or anything like that. And that, it's okay to disagree on certain aspects of things, of how we do things, maybe, how some people campaign. It's not for everyone or who people associate with or anything, but we actually all have the same end goal. And we have big opposition because they're just pathetic, but we have like governments and institutions that aren't on our side. And so there's no one right way to fight this. We've just got to fight it with absolutely everything we've got. So while there might be one group over there fighting it in a way you're like, oh, that's not really for me, and you're going over here and fighting it that way, great. Like, throw shit at a wall and see what sticks, because something eventually will, because we can't possibly be thinking that for the rest of eternity people are going to be thinking men or women. It's just absolute nonsense.